Welcome back to Thinkk's startup course on launching your AI startup in under 28 days. My name is Yanni. I'm one of the growth partners here at Thinkk, and I appreciate you bopping in to learn about how to set up your structure, how to get your LLC right, and generally speaking, what sort of paperwork you need in the early stages to go ahead and get everything together. But before we get started, remember that the source of our credibility comes from two places. The first one is going to be my decade plus experience in entrepreneurship, launching, running, investing, and advising in multiple different companies, as well as Think's experience launching over 45 different AI startups last year. And so a lot of the things that you're going to learn here are going to be those data-driven insights we learned from real startup launches. And so the first thing that we want to go ahead and do here is just clarify the stage that we're at. So the first step is to go ahead and nail your idea. And so if you haven't seen that video already, go back and watch that one. But the second one is this. The second one is once you nail your idea, you want to go ahead and actually make it real. And so the way that we do that is by forming a legal structure around this. Okay. And so we're going to go ahead and cover the four most common legal structures that you might see and give you an idea of which one you might want to choose if you're just going ahead and starting your company. The first one is going to be your LLC, your limited liability company. This is by far the most common legal structure that we're going to see, and for good reason. It does mostly everything that most people want, outside of a few exceptions. So the first thing is it's going to give you liability protection. And what that means is that if somebody goes ahead and sues your business, they can only touch whatever is in your business, not whatever is in your personal bank account. And so we'll give you an example here. Let's say that I, Yanni, went ahead and ran an exercise company. And when I was going ahead and giving some sort of jumping jacks classes, somebody went ahead and hurt their ankle. They decide to sue me. And if they decide to sue me, the great thing about a limited liability company is that they can only take whatever's in the business. And so anything that I've already taken personally or anything, my house, my car, everything else, that stuff is all safe and exempt from liability, generally speaking. And so this is a great way to go ahead and limit the amount of risk that you have as a business owner. The second structure that you might go ahead and see is going to be something called a C-Corp, C corporation. And these ones are typically going to be necessary if you want to raise venture capital. And so if you want to go ahead and raise a bunch of money because you're trying to build the next SpaceX or a Tesla or something like that, and you need upwards of 100 different founders, ideally, or at least have the possibility of having those investors come from outside the United States. At that point, you're going to need a C corp, and so a C corp is great. It's amazing. Most people are setting up in Nevada nowadays. The one thing to remember is that a C corp is will basically make you subject to something called double taxation, and so it means that number one, the business pays any sort of tax on the income that it generates, and then you're also going to pay personal income tax on anything that you take from the business. And so, although there's double taxation here, there are some upsides, like the fact that you can have a whole bunch of shareholders and raise a bunch of money from Canadians or Mexicans or anybody else that you possibly want. Another formation that you might typically see is something called an S-Corp. And so this is a bit of a hybrid vehicle between an LLC and a C-Corp, and it tries to strike a middle ground. So you can't have infinite numbers of shareholders in this one. You can only have up to 100, and each one needs to be a U.S. citizen. So if they're not, it's not going to work for you. If you have a Canadian, co-founder like I do in one of my companies, again, it's not going to work for you. But for people that don't need to have a ton of different investors on board, but still need to have a few, this is typically a good way to do it. The last one that we want to talk about here is something called a nonprofit, and everybody knows what a nonprofit is. But basically, what a nonprofit's mission is to make the world a better place in one extent or another. And I know a lot of companies say that, but the company's main mission when you're getting involved in a nonprofit needs to be something which pertains to like the public well-being or public health or something. So in other words, if you're tackling homelessness or like a drug crisis or something that's very large and very massive, you can go ahead and get a nonprofit for that. And what it lets you do is be exempt from income tax. There are downsides though, and the downside is that number one, everybody knows what you make. Okay, so all of your financials, every single one of them are public. That means they know what your company makes, they know what you got paid, and everything else. And also, it's not that you can just take any sort of money. I think any sort of excess money that the company generates, you actually have to reinvest back into the firm. And so it's not that you can just go ahead and take a bunch of money. So this is some of the downsides of that, but obviously, you do get the upside of being able to help the world and not having a whole bunch of tax liabilities as you're doing it. Also, that one's not going to be best for most people because you do need like a board of directors and a few other things. So if you are a solopreneur, again, you're probably a nonprofit's not going to be the way to go. Let's go ahead and make the pick. How do we do this? So the first thing is, if you're a solopreneur and you're just trying to get a consulting business going, you're a coach or something, you can pretty much just go ahead and do an LLC. It's going to be good for the vast majority of cases. If you want to go ahead, however, and build something like a SpaceX or a Tesla, and you know that you need to raise a lot of money to go ahead and do this, typically go with the C Corp. And again, incorporate in Nevada. Be careful where you incorporate because not every place is the same. If you want to raise capital, but on a smaller scale, I think the S-Corp is simply a good option. And then again, if you're trying to tackle some sort of big like public crisis, and it's the public that's going to benefit from your endeavors, then you can go ahead and take a look at the nonprofit. Again, if you have a few other people on your team, because you do need boards of directors and different things like that, depending on the state. So let's go ahead and talk about how you actually form your company, because this is the next step, right? It's not very difficult to do, but what you would be surprised to find out is that there are companies like Zen Business and LegalZoom, which you may have seen because of their fancy NBA partnerships and whatnot. They spend an absurd amount of money every single year to convince you that forming your business is something that's like really, really hard to do. And the reason they spend all this money trying to do that is because if you knew it were easy to do, their business wouldn't exist anymore. And so unfortunately, because they spend so much money on marketing and because they have all these other things that they sell you, they just become such an expensive option that although you get away from maybe like 10 minutes of legal work yourself, it really is just not worth it in the long run. They're extremely slow to the point where it takes them a few weeks to get things done, even if you expedite the process. And they also go ahead and get you with upsells and a whole bunch of other stuff that you just don't need. Annual recurring fees for things like registered agents that most people don't know anything about, but it turns out you can just be your own registered agent, not pay it, right? So in other words, they just try to sell you on all these different things that you do not need just to go ahead and get you on recurring revenue and try to make you scared about how much work is involved. Then they send you emails on a daily basis, making it seem like they're doing something. When in reality, I promise you, as somebody that's gone ahead and set up their last however many companies, like personally, just on the state website, there is literally no work to be done. Okay, so all these companies are pretty much finessing you. Don't let them do that. Go ahead and just go to the state website. You support your state's business bureau when you do this. And there's no fees. And it's literally instant. You can call your business bureau, let them know you're going to do it. By the time you put the paperwork in, it's pretty much done. So this is by far my recommendation. It'll save you somewhere like $300-400 just when you go ahead and get started. And then every year after that, it's going to save you $300-400 again because of all these random fees that these companies are going ahead and pinning you with. And it's super unfair and it's not right. So if you can, please go ahead and use just your own state website to do this. And if you need some guidance with it, use like a ChatGPT or something to go ahead and get you through that. When you go ahead and form your company, you're going to get a couple of different things. The first one is something called an EIN. And an EIN is your employer identification number. It's the same thing as a social security number, but for your business. And you're going to need this on a few different occasions. The first one is to open up a business bank account. You're going to need your EIN. Second thing is if you ever go to pay people and you have payroll, your accounting software is going to want to know what your EIN is. And so this is something that's important to keep in mind. And most states actually just issue this with your formation docs. And so for me, the last LLC I went ahead and got my EIN documents immediately with them. If you do not get those documents with them for whatever reason, you go to the IRS website and they will go ahead and give that to you. It's a free little thing. Obviously, they want to be able to tax you, so they will definitely, give you your EIN, no problem. The second thing you want to do is once you have your EIN, you're going to go over to your local bank or you're going to find some online bank that you enjoy and go ahead and just set up a business bank account. It's really important to keep those things separate. You don't want to mix your business with your personal expenses. And as long as you can go ahead and just keep everything under one account, it's going to make the accounting really simple and mean that you can deduct a whole bunch of expenses to lower what your taxable income would be at the end of the year. The last thing you're going to need here just to get started on a compliance basis is just going to be some other basic legal docs. And this kind of depends on what your business is, and it's different in every case. But sometimes you might need like a reseller's permit, right? So if you go ahead and are taking on a whole bunch of inventory, if you get a reseller's permit, it means that you don't have to pay sales tax that first time that you buy. So it might save you 7, 10, 15%, depending on what your sales tax is. You might also need, for example, a sales tax number, right? So if you're doing a lot of business in a certain state, those states are typically going to require that you have to that you collect income tax or a sales tax for those people, and then it's actually your job to remit that sales tax back to the local government of whatever that place is. And so, in order to be able to do that, you're also going to need a sales tax number. And then, depending on what sort of business that you're involved in, like if you're involved in something that's super regulated, like healthcare or something, typically there might be other permits that are involved. If you're involved in like health or food, like with the FDA, there's typically other stuff that's involved. So, do your due diligence on this stuff. Make sure that you are in compliance before you go out into the market, just so nobody sues you and tries to take all your money. A couple other things that we want to throw in here are a couple tools that you can use as a business owner. The first one is going to be something called a DBA, and another thing is going to be called a trademark. You probably know what a trademark is, so let's start with a DBA. A DBA is something called a doing business as, and basically what it allows you to do is just create an alias for your business. So I'll give you an example here of what this looks like. For a long time, I ran a company, which the legal name for this company was called One True Health and Fitness LLC. Okay. But as you can imagine, that is a terrible name for search engines. That is a terrible name for memory recall and all the rest. And so what we went ahead and did was we filed a DBA for One True, ONECRUE. much simpler, much more memorable, a lot shorter and easier to find. And so then we went ahead and ran all of our business operations under one true. And so what a DBA allows you to do is just test different branding, test different campaigns, test different names, and see what really resonates. Another thing you might want to go ahead and get together is going to be your trademarks. Now, uh, I will be honest, trademarks do take a little bit of time to get together, and they're definitely not as straightforward as just setting up an LLC or a C Corp on your state's website. However, if you have decided and it seems apparent to you that whatever you're doing is going to work out long term, it's not a terrible idea to go ahead and get a trademark. What it basically lets you do is protect some of the intellectual property that you own. Your intellectual property you can think of as a digital asset. It adds value to your business. It's something that you can eventually go ahead and sell. And the other thing that this lets you do is just stay secure, because the last thing that you want to do is go ahead and launch a brand. Let's say that you call it like XYZ company. You're doing all this great marketing, you're branding all your different documents and whatnot, and then 2 months later, some person that wants to take advantage of you goes ahead and gets a similar domain name, and they launch the thing, and then they trademark it, right? If they end up doing that, like depending on what the laws are in the states, I mean, some of those states will actually force you to go ahead and change your business, even if you were operating at first. So you have to be careful with this. So the minute that it becomes apparent that your business is going to be worth something, our recommendation: go ahead and just get some sort of trademark, and make sure that you're basically protected. If you need help with any of this stuff, with deciding should I pick an LLC, a C Corp, how do I do this? What does that look like for me? What should my DBA be? Go ahead. You can go ahead and book a workshop on Thinkk.com. I'm going to leave a link somewhere around here that you can go ahead and do that. And I'm also going to leave a link to a whole bunch of educational materials that you can find. We have a ton on the website. Go ahead and check it out. That way you can continue your educational journey completely for free, and no additional cost to you. Thank you very much for bopping in. I'm going to see you in the next video. Bye bye.